Apologies, I'm having some issues with the Wi-Fi on my laptop, so I'm unable to share the screen tonight, I'm afraid. Um, so think of another way. Apologies, someone sent a request for recording, I accidentally rejected it. If you want to resend it.
This meeting is being recorded.
For those that want to follow along then, if you're able to just follow the text that was previously sent out, we're going to start on section 12, inshallah. Text on the heed to the seed, لفتة الكبد نصيحة الولد. If anyone has the text, if they're able to share it in the chat, because my Wi-Fi is not working, I'm actually working from my phone, so I don't have the document at hand. If anyone's able to just share it in the group chat, if you don't mind. And once that's done, we'll make a start, inshallah. Barakallah feek, Faizan. طيب, I assume you can hear me okay, inshallah. So we'll make a start. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد طه الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين ومن اتبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا، وأنت يا حي يا قيوم تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا، وانفعنا بما علمتنا، وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعل نياتنا خالصة لوجهك الكريم لله تعالى. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us all the sincerest of intentions, the ability to understand the religious knowledge, and to get the reward in the hereafter for all our good deeds. Thereafter, inshallah, we're going to continue from the section we left off. We've finished section 11 of the text. Move on to section 12, inshallah. And as you are noticing now, as we move through the text, the chapters or the sections are a bit shorter, and we'll go through them a bit quicker as we now head towards the end of this honorable and beneficial text. Inshallah, there is a plan to start a new text after this one, which we'll get to, inshallah, closer to the time. For now, inshallah, we're going to continue then with the next section, where the author, rahimahullah, continued to advise his son and said, وَيَنْبَغِي أَن تَسْمُوَ هِمَّتُكَ إِلَى الْكَمَالِ, which means your determination, remember your himma, the energy that you put in to doing certain deeds, should ascend to perfection, meaning perfection in merits and good deeds. So this coincides, if you remember, with what Ibnul Jawziyy, rahimahullah, mentioned previously to his son, that one should not be satisfied with the bare minimum. One should not be satisfied with doing less than what one can do and is able to do. If you're able to do more, why stop at the least amount? If you're able to acquire more reward, and attain a higher rank, then why are you settling for less? Why are you not then aspiring for more? So he's saying to his son here then that one should be aspiring to reach perfection, kamal. This is where your determination should be, hoping and trying and striving to spend your time in obedience to Allah, the time that you have available, not putting it to waste, not letting the moments go by, as he was regularly advising his son previously, without gaining something in return, meaning something of benefit, that something that one would be happy to see on the day of judgment, and definitely staying away from the sins. He continued to say, فَإِنَّ خَلْقًا وَقَفُوا مَعَ الزُّهْدِ وَخَلْقًا تَشَاغَلُوا بِالْعِلْمِ وَنَذَرَ أَقْوَامٌ جَمَعُوا بَيْنَ الْعِلْمِ الْكَامِلِ وَالْعَمَلِ الْكَامِلِ. So if you are following on in the text, by the way, we are on page 73 of the PDF file out of 80. Those of you who are following along in the book, in the English, it's page 73, section 12, inshallah, for those who are keeping up with it. I forgot to mention it at the beginning. So we read the line, your determination should ascend to perfection. And next, he mentions many people stopped with austerity, zuhud. In other words, many people spent the energy that they had in detaching themselves from worldly luxuries, and that's it. That's where they stopped in terms of the effort that they put in. He said, while others got busy with knowledge, they spent their time acquiring the religious knowledge or teaching religious knowledge, but didn't look to then detach themselves from worldly enjoyments that you still see at times. Certain students of knowledge, teachers of knowledge, that have acquired the knowledge. They're not committing sins, but they might be still attached to fancy cars, luxury clothing, watches, holidays, things like that, meaning that they still have an attachment to this dunya. They have knowledge, a vast amount of it, a good amount of it, but you don't see, if you like, sometimes the effect upon them. So Ibnul Jawziyy said, few people combined the full knowledge with the full practice. That this combination is the best state to be on. That you acquired the knowledge, you spend your time learning it, and then you practice what you acquired. You didn't just settle for, oh, I have knowledge, or I'm able to teach it, or I do teach it. Rather, you look to put it into practice. You try to apply whatever it is that you learn. So when you learn certain, for example, recommended and sunnah components of the religion, something that the Prophet ﷺ used to say or do or act in a certain way, then the effect of that is seen on you. Meaning that not only have you acquired that knowledge, you know what the Prophet ﷺ said, did, encouraged, but you're also putting that into practice. You're also seeking to apply that in your actual life. So this is the one who is what? Combining the knowledge with the practice and implementation and application of that knowledge. And so one should not just learn the knowledge and not seek to practice it. Rather, whatever one learns, the intention should be behind it I want to apply this. I want to benefit from it. I want to put it into practice so that I can get the fruits of the knowledge that I just acquired. And that's why the scholars said that one seeks the knowledge in order to apply it, not just to say, yep, I've taken that book and I've completed this text and I was there for that dawrah and I managed to catch this lesson and I've gone through that text and I was there in this particular session, and just moving from one to the next and the like. There might be a certain ascension going on in terms of you taking deeper texts, but where's the effect of that? Where's the fruit of the labor, the efforts that have been put in to attending those sessions and hearing that knowledge, if nothing much is changing in you? You're the same person, your habits are the same, your practices are the same, your routine is the same. After learning everything you've learned, you still don't perform, let's say, certain sunnah prayers. After all that you learned, you still don't seek to fast some of the optional fasts. After all of what you learned, you still don't try to recite some Quran or do some dhikr or the like. That you've learned how beneficial it is, how rewardable it is, how virtuous it is. You learned it, you attained that knowledge, then you moved on to another text and another book, and then you learned this and this is beneficial. Then you moved on to another one and you heard that is good to do in the morning and in the evening. You take in the knowledge. But what about applying it? This is why the scholars said that or some of the scholars said at least, for every 5 new hadiths that one learns, they should seek to apply at least one of them. Meaning, if you make that your type of ratio or target, at the least, we're saying, for every 5, 1, meaning that it's not easy to apply absolutely everything that you learn, which is good though, and desirable, and the ultimate goal. But at the very least, as you're going along, change is occurring, benefits are being applied, a good change is taking place in your life, good habits are being built as a result of your knowledge increasing and getting more and more. So this is what the author is alluding to his son, that yes, it's good that a person acquires knowledge, and some people just do that, and some people spend their time saying we're going to live the simple life, but they don't acquire more knowledge than that. He's saying, my son, the rarity, while it's the best thing to do, is to acquire that knowledge and apply it to the fullest. He said, وَاعْلَمْ أَنِّي قَدْ تَصَحَّحْتُ التَّابِعِينَ وَمَنْ بَعْدَهُمْ فما رأيت أحظى بالكمال من 4 أنفس: سعيد بن المسيب أو المسيب، والحسن البصري، وسفيان لا وسفيان الثوري، وأحمد بن حنبل رضي الله عنهم. وقد كانوا رجالا، وإنما كانت لهم همم ضعفت عندنا. He said, no, that I went through the followers, meaning the tabi'een, those individuals who met the Sahaba. They learned from the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam directly, from the best of generations, without getting to meet the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. So there were some individuals who were alive at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and believed in him, but they did not get the opportunity to meet him in person sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One of the more famous examples of that was Ashama al-Najashi radiyallahu anhu, the king of Abyssinia, who took in the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam after he sent them to him to seek refuge from the persecution of the idol worshippers. There, he heard the call of Islam from these companions. They invited him to Islam. He embraced Islam. He not only embraced Islam with those companions while the Prophet ﷺ was alive, he became amongst the awliya. It was mentioned that upon his death, after he died, people said we could see light coming out of his grave, shining out of his grave. And from the time he had embraced Islam to the time he died, 7 years had passed. And the Prophet ﷺ, upon his passing, said to the companions, today your pious brother Ashama died, so pray for him. The Prophet ﷺ called him a pious man. But he never met the Prophet ﷺ, so he was considered a tabi'i, one of the followers of the companions. May Allah Ta'ala raise their ranks. And so Ibnul Jawziyy rahimahullah said, I went through the biographies of these honorable tabi'een. Remember, we're talking about, just one generation after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These were still, giants of knowledge. These were still some of the cream of the crop, some of the best of people that ever lived, because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the best of generations and centuries would be the first one, meaning those among the Sahaba. Then the generation that came after, the second century of individuals, referring to the tabi'een. These were praised by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a group. So Ibn al-Jawzi is saying, I went through the lives and the biographies of these individuals, and even those who succeeded them, those who came after them, and I did not see people more fulfilling of perfection than four. So he's telling his son that these four individuals that he is going to mention are among the best of the people. Those who had the strongest determinations to seek the high merits and ranks. He's not saying that nobody else was good, but he's saying out of all of those that I came across and read about and found out about, these four were the best. Who are they? He said, Sa'id Ibnul Musayyab. And it's quoted and narrated that his name can also be said as Al-Musayyib. So with a fatha on the ya and a kasra on the ya. So sometimes you might see hadiths in which he is quoted, and it might say Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib and Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib. The linguists said that both of these are valid ways to mention his name. Who was he then? He was Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib ibn Hazn al-Makhzumi radiyallahu anhu. He was one of the greatest of the tabi'een. Muhammad ibn Hibban said he was the leading giver of fatwas in his era in Al-Madinah. Remember, we're talking about the city of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who after the Sahaba, may Allah raise their ranks, have passed away. This is the leading individual who used to give religious judgments, fatwas. Knowledge was there. people had extreme amounts of knowledge in these eras. So for it to be said about him, he was the leading one, shows his high level of knowledge. It was said then that he was born 2 years after the caliphate of Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu anhu, and eventually passed away in the year 94 after the Hijrah. And he was known as Ahadul Fuqaha is-Sab'ah, one of the 7 jurists of Al-Madinah. They were known by that title because these 7 were considered the elite, like the almost like board of scholars, you could say, the head individuals of Al-Madinah. He was one of them. It's well known in the circles of religious knowledge, the 7 fuqaha of Medina. He was one of them. Qatada, may Allah raise his rank, said, I have not seen anyone who was more knowledgeable than Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib in what is halal and haram. He was the one who memorized the most rulings that were given by Sayyiduna Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu, to the extent that Sa'id became known as Rawiyatu Umar, the narrator of Umar ibn al-Khattab. That is, if you wanted to know what did Umar say and give and judge and give a fatwa according to, then Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib was your man. He was the narrator of those rulings. And his father was the companion al-Musayyib ibn Hazan. And he mentioned that his father, Hazan, may Allah raise his rank. So who are we talking about here? The grandfather of Sa'id. His name was Hazan. He spoke to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about his name, that the word Hazan in the Arabic language means su'uba, difficulty. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Bal anta sahal, brother, you are easy, sahal. That he was implying that perhaps you change your name to Sahal. And for a reason, he insisted in keeping it as Hazan. But he mentioned that as a knock-on effect of that, because his name was Hazan, which means difficulty, he said hard times and difficulties continued for him for the rest of his life. So his grandfather was a companion who was with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and likewise his father was a companion, and he, Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib, was amongst the greatest of the tabi'een. May Allah ta'ala raise all of their ranks. It shows then how knowledge many times and the rearing of individuals, if it's done in the proper way and given to family members, then great benefits occur. Putting your son in particular on the path of knowledge from a young age will enable you to see the fruits of that later on. Here you've got a grandfather followed by father, followed by grandson who attain high levels. And so we see how important it is that one passes on their knowledge to their family members, and especially the youth among them, sons and daughters as well. He said also then, Al-Hasan al-Bisri radiyallahu anhu was among those 4, and Sufyan al-Thawri, may Allah raise their ranks. We've talked about those 2 in some detail in the previous sessions. We've talked about Al-Hasan al-Bisri more than once. And we've also talked about Sufyan. We didn't talk about Sufyan. We missed a slide from last session. We had one slide left. No one reminded me. We'll do that at the end. How about that? There was one slide left of section 11 where Sufyan al-Thawri radiyallahu anhu is spoken about. No, let's do it now because we're on Sufyan al-Thawri. If we skip back to the end of section 11, just a little bit we're going to mention about him, where the very last or 3 lines after the hadith about the 3 men who were in the cave and they supplicated to the Prophet supplicated to Allah Ta'ala, to ask for safe exit from the cave in which they were trapped by that rock. So after there's around 3 lines, 4 lines that talk about Sufyan al-Thawri, rahimahullah. You can find that in the text, perhaps. We're going to just go back to that a little bit and just talk about that now. It says, Ibnul Jawziyy, rahimahullah, mentioned, وَرُؤْيَ سُفْيَانُ الثَّوْرِيُّ رَحْمَةُ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى عَلَيْهِ فِي الْمَنَامِ فَقِيلَ لَهُ مَا فَعَلَ اللَّهُ بِكَ قال ما كان إلا أن وضعت في اللحد فإذا أنا بين يدي رب العالمين فدخلت فإذا أنا بقائل يقول سفيان قلت سفيان قال تذكر يوما آثرت الله على هواك قلت نعم فأخذتني صوان النثار من الجنة. Remember, he's talking about the context before this particular text of individuals who, if they were pious and obedient, then they would see the effects of that upon their deathbed and after their death in the hereafter. We talked about how the good deeds of Yunus alayhi salam enabled him to be saved from the belly of the whale, while the bad deeds of Fir'aun did not prevent and save him from the drowning that he endured in this life and the punishment in the hereafter. So he quotes at the end of that particular section a narration about Sufyan al-Thawri. He said, Sufyan al-Thawri, may Allah have mercy on him, was seen in a dream after he passed away, that is. And he was asked in that dream, what did Allah do to you? Meaning, what happened to you? What was your standing with Allah? He said, as soon as I was laid in the grave, I found myself being questioned. Who is this that we're talking about? Abu Abdullah Sufyan ibn Sa'id al-Thawri, born in the year 97 and passed away in the year 161. So in that second generation after the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and he was among the great and elite scholars. Shu'bah and others said that Sufyan was Amirul Mu'mineen in hadith. Amirul Mu'mineen means the leader of the believers, the prince of the believers. In what? In the knowledge of hadith. He narrated from his father and also from Zayd ibn Harith radiyallahu anhu. Ahmad ibn Hanbal radiyallahu anhu said, no one is foremost in my heart beyond Sufyan. Ibnul Mubarak radiyallahu anhu, talk about elite scholars here, Ibnul Mubarak, Ibn Hanbal, etc. Ibn Mubarak here said, I wrote from 1,200 sheikhs. That's how many teachers he had. 1,200. But I did not write from anyone greater than Sufyan. And Shu'bah also said about him, verily, Sufyan became the best of the people through knowledge and God-fearingness. He didn't allow himself to get even close to sins. He used to avoid even what was disliked and makruh, out of fear of falling into what was sinful. This was what enabled him to attain these high ranks. And what happened then? He was seen in a dream, asked, what did Allah do to you? He said in the dream, as soon as I was laid in the grave, I found myself being questioned, meaning I was standing to be held to account for my deeds. Remember, this is a dream. It's not the case that in your grave you will be stood up and held to account for everything that you did as you will on the Day of Judgment. That's for the Day of Judgment. But in the dream, he was seen on this state, and someone said, Sufyan, is that you? And I said, yes, Sufyan, it's me. He said, do you remember a day when you chose obeying Allah over your bad inclination? A thought, a temptation came to you, but you prioritized, you chose to obey Allah over that bad inclination. I said, yes. He said, then I was overwhelmed with trays of pearls from paradise. That's the reward that he got. Where was he? In the grave. Why? Piety that he showed whilst he was alive. Going back to what we were saying then in section 12, that Ibnul Jawziyy said that Sufyan al-Thawri was among these perfect individuals, these Muslims who displayed perfection, acquiring the knowledge, applying the knowledge. Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib, al-Hassan al-Basri, Sufyan al-Thawri. And the fourth whom he quoted was Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Who is he? Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Hanbal al-Marwazi. So we said he is Ahmad, the son of Muhammad, the son of Hanbal. Yet when we famously quote his name, we say Ahmad ibn Hanbal, while Hanbal was not his father, rather his grandfather. This is something that is valid among the usages of language among the Arabs, that sometimes one uses the word ibn and yet they attach that to their grandfather, without that considered to be a form of cheating or lying, for example. The Prophet ﷺ once said, Ana Ibnu Abdul Muttalib. Literally means I am the son of Abdul Muttalib, while his father was Abdullah. This is valid to ascribe yourself and associate yourself with your grandfather. So Ahmad, may Allah raise his rank, his actual father was called Muhammad, and Hanbal was his grandfather. He is the famous Imam of Ahlul Sunnah, one of the four great jurists from which the madhahib are taken. And he is the author of the famous Musnad Ahmad, and other texts as well. He was born in Baghdad in the year 164 after the Hijrah and grew up there. And he sought the knowledge of Hadith in the year 179, meaning he was only around 15 when he started seeking the knowledge of Hadith and toured the various countries. He entered Al-Kufa, Al-Basra, both of which are in Al-Iraq. He also went to Al-Hijaz, Al-Yemen, Asham, and the Arabian Peninsula, not to see the sights, rather in his pursuit of hadiths. And so the likes of Al-Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawood, Ibrahim al-Harbi, and others narrated hadith from him. And so he was known to be among the giants of the Huffaz and scholars. Al-Shafi'i himself, may Allah raise his rank, said, I left Baghdad and did not leave behind anyone more proficient in fiqh, detached from the world, God-fearing and knowledgeable than him. Who is he talking about? Ahmad ibn Hanbal, radiyallahu anhu. And Abu Zur'ah al-Razi said, Ahmad memorized 1,000 hadiths. This is how the Arabs would say a million. 1,000. How? 1,000. That's a million hadiths. Were there a million sayings of the Prophet? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? No. But when you talk about different narrations of the same hadith, these are sometimes counted as hadiths. And so Ahmad ibn Hanbal memorized so many different narrations of hadiths that the number reached 1,000,000. Abu Zur'a al-Razi was asked, how do you know that? He said, I revised with him. I took those chapters from him. This wasn't just theoretical or probably he's memorized that much. This was heard from him, witnessed. And he was among the most generous and mannerly men. He displayed great humility to the scholars around him. And reciprocally, that is in return, they used to honor him and revere him. Yet, if one was to look at his biography and his timeline, things that happened during his lifetime, he was someone that was severely tortured. Many hardships befell him, which perhaps now is not the time to go into those, but he died as among the greatest scholars that ever lived. And he died in Baghdad on Friday, the 12th of Rabi'un al-Awwal. We know that date. In the year 241, may Allah, the Exalted, raise his rank and raise their ranks, these four individuals that Ibnul Jawziyy just quoted. And he went on to say, they were men. Meaning, all of what you've heard and all of what was quoted and narrated about these individuals were not mentioning individuals who were, superhuman. Robots, machines, extraterrestrials. They were men. They had inclinations, they had desires, they got tired, they got hungry, they needed to sleep, they did sleep, they ate, they drank. However, they had determinations which are weak in us. Meaning, what was the difference then between them and us? The efforts, energy, application. They had 24 hours in a day. They got tired and ate and drank. What allowed them to reach the ranks that they did then? The efforts they put in. They pushed themselves. They went against their inclinations and desires and temptations. They forced themselves to get up at night, to put aside the desires of comfort and luxury until they reached the levels that they reached. And Ibn al-Jawziyy said, These determinations are weak in us. Look at his humility. He's talking about himself. We have weak determinations, people like me. If Ibnul Jawziyy is saying this about himself, then how about if he saw the determinations of people in our time? Sheikh, that lesson was too long. You want to give us another class? I've taken 2 this week. And you want us to revise and make notes? The determinations of many people nowadays are not as they once were. It shows then the work that is required. This acquisition of high ranks is not going to come just by wanting it or sufficing yourself with attending a lesson, once a week, twice a week, and you've done your bit. There needs to be an active effort to change your life for the better. What are you doing? What are you trying to instill of positive change in your life? What aspirations do you have? Where do you want to get to in this life and in the hereafter? And how are you going to get there? These are things that require active planning. Don't people who want to buy a house, let's say, plan it through? I don't have any money right now. How am I going to do that? I need to find a job. How am I going to find a job? I need to apply. And once I apply for a job and get a job, I need to then start saving, putting things aside, making sacrifices, working extra hours, so that I can get what I need to be able to purchase that house. A plan was made and then it's followed. Okay, how about the plan to get into paradise? The plan to be among the first to enter paradise? The plan to be safe from any prior punishment in hellfire? The plan to be among those that would be in the company of the Prophet ﷺ on the Day of Judgment. Who doesn't want that? How are you going to get it? How are you going to attain that rank and deserve those enjoyments that Allah has prepared, that no eye has ever seen, no ear has ever heard, no heart has ever imagined? Can't just be through desiring it and wanting it. All of us want it. All of us desire that. All of us would love to be among those. But what's the plan? Plan needs to be knowledge and implementation of that knowledge. Acquiring the tools and the guideline and the path and the map to know the direction of Al-Jannah, and then sticking to that path. Not getting distracted. Not becoming wayward. Not becoming deviated. Not going in the wrong direction. And that requires steadfastness and adherence, patience, and commitment and dedication. And Ibnul Jawziyy is helping us to do that by showing people before you've done it. They were men like you. They were humans like you. They had desires like you. They had inclinations like you. But they managed to do it. So it's not something beyond your means, or people. It's not something above your capabilities, or Muslims. You can do it, but effort is required. Sacrifice is required. Energy is required. Dedication is required. But it can be done if you're willing to give it that application. And he said lastly, فقد كان في السلف خلق كثير لهم همم عالية، فإذا أردت أن تنظر إلى أحوالهم فانظر في كتاب صفة الصفوة وإن شئت تأمل أخبار سعيد والحسن وسفيان وأحمد رضي الله عنهم فقد جمعت لكل واحد منهم كتابا. Ibnul Jawziyy said to his son that a large number of the Salaf had high determinations. Back then, it wasn't as rare as it is now. People used to put effort in. People used to put those or make those sacrifices. And if you want to look into their situations, if you want to check out, read about, look into what they used to do, how they used to spend their time, how that energy was applied, he said, look into the book Sifatu Safwa, if you wish. Who's the author of that book? Ibnul Jawziyy himself. Out of his humility, he didn't say, look in my book. He just said, look in this book, if you wish. And it's a very beneficial book, this, for those who are able to access it and extract the benefits from it. And he said, reflect, once you've read, that is, on the news, that is, information that you get about Sa'id, Al-Hasan, Sufyan, and Ahmad, these four individuals that he just quoted. May Allah raise their ranks. He said, I have compiled for each of them a chapter. And so this is something beneficial for us, looking into how other Muslims were, how they applied their time, what they used to target in terms of good deeds, how they used to spread their time and dedicate and allocate it, how much for acquiring knowledge, how much for teaching knowledge, how much for sleeping, revising, reviewing, traveling. All of these things can give us a type of blueprint to imitate and follow and copy for the better. Many of us perhaps might know biographies and facts and information about people that have no benefit in our lives. From sportsmen to celebrities to others. And yet we barely know anything about the best of those that came before us, namely the companions, then after them the followers of the companions, and then the many, many scholars of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah that passed by. And we're just getting a glimpse of one of those, who is the author of this book, Ibnul Jawziyy, rahimahullah, who's sharing with us how life should be spent, how it was spent by him, and how we can seek to implement and apply the good teachings that came from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to be the best we can be. This is what he wanted for his son, to be the best he could be, not satisfy himself and settle for the minimum, the least amount. Yeah, I scraped into paradise. Why scrape when you can march in, fly over the sirat? If you can, why wouldn't you? If you've got access to the knowledge to do that and the energy and the ability to do that, why settle for anything less than that? It's the message he's giving to his son, and one we can also reflect on ourselves, that if I can be better, why am I not? If I can be a better Muslim, why am I satisfied and sufficing with anything less than that? So as Muslims, we should always be striving to do more, learn more, apply more, teach more, and seek the acceptance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all that we do. By that, we reach the end of that section. Inshallah, we'll make a start with section 13 in the next session. Perhaps we might take 2 sections. As I said, they're getting a bit shorter, and So inshallah, we'll move through the end of the text a bit quicker as we inshallah start making some preparations for the next text and inshallah continue on our benefit into the blessed month of Ramadan as well, God willing. Barakallahu fikum, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. And with the tahleel and the salah upon the Prophet. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. رب اغفر لنا وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات رب اغفر لنا وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات رب اغفر لنا وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات Ameen wa fikum. May Allah protect you all. Keep us in your du'as in your absence. And inshallah, we'll meet again next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.